For those of you joining us, we have the pleasure of hearing from all 5 women that are currently serving as president of the 5 actuarial associations based in the US. And we are all enjoying the conversation and learning a lot and getting a little inspired along the way. So our last segment is going to focus on volunteering, and Jennifer's already brought this up and I've given her a high five, I agree, but I want to learn a little bit more about what volunteering has meant for some of the other panelists. So we're going to start off a little bit and ask this question. So how has volunteering benefited you particularly, and how do you make it more enticing for women and their employers to bring forth those volunteers as well? And we're going to start off with you, Virginia, and see what you have to share there. Thank you.
Sure. And, you know, speaking of imposter syndrome, I suffer very much from that. Always doubting my reasoning why I am where I am. But I am trying to adjust my thinking. And I did get into volunteering relatively late. I'm surrounded by it. My husband has volunteered a lot, and, you know, bosses and mentors definitely volunteered. But I would say, as far as how it's benefited me, I mean, I'm still learning new skills, you know, presentation skills, discussion skills. Again, adjusting to different personalities and learning how to work within a group that has a variety of different personalities. I think those are all very valuable things to learn, and something you may not always get to in your day-to-day job. And as far as making it more enticing for women, I think it is just that, getting the experience, getting out there, and learning new things, meeting new people, and for the organization. I know when I brought up, you know, whether I should be stepping into this role with ISEA, my employer was all for it. You know, the more exposure we get, the better off it is. So I think that certainly can be a selling point, and also, again, improves my skills that will be used for their benefit. So I think that sums it up for me.
Thank you. And Ellen, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, you know, I think Virginia sort of laid a good groundwork for advocating for volunteering and giving back to the profession. And, you know, for me, it's been an opportunity in some of my volunteer activities to practice some of the essential and foundational skills they need for consulting and leadership, right? Whether starting with public speaking and doing it in a relatively safe and supportive environment, talking to other actuaries. Now, some people may say that's scary, right? Because you're talking to other people who you might feel like this is the imposter syndrome. Well, there's people in the audience who probably know more about this topic than I do. And yes, but those who do have likely been there and been in your shoes and will support you through that. And it's a chance to go out and practice. Things like recruiting for other for other continuing education events gives you the opportunity to cold call people, email people, persuade them, recruit them, leading a committee, all these kinds of skills that I could then, for me, take back to my day job and help make me a better consultant, a better manager, and ultimately built up to and led to my opportunity to become chief actuary of my firm. And then in that role, the things that I learned leading a practice and managing people and managing, you know, a P&L and helping, you know, supporting as part of our leadership team, running the company and the business, then has made me a better CCA president, because I bring these two different roles and different perspectives and things that I learn in each of them to the other one. So it's a great way of just diversifying your skill set. And I think you'll find if you go out and volunteer, the other people you're volunteering with are in the same boat as you are. They're trying to achieve the same kind of goals and learning as you are. They're just as scared that they're not going to do a good job as you are, and you're all in it together. And it's a great way, as Virginia said, of networking, raising your personal profile, your firm's profile, and all of these are good things that just can start to snowball for you and lead to one opportunity leads to the next opportunity, whether it's in your volunteer life or in your work life.
That's lovely. Thank you both for sharing that. I have to say, when I started volunteering, it was mostly women. I'm sorry, mostly men. Hello. I think this panel has like brainwashed me, but it was mostly men. And but as I went through, it helped me because there was mostly men at my firm as well. It allowed me to build this connection with other women who were in the profession and who were very ambitious and had great leaderships and things I could learn from, like Kathy was talking about earlier. And I kind of built my tribe of women who I could go to and could support me, and I could support them as well. So I think there's that as well. It just kind of expands your network. If you're at a place that's still progressing toward better gender diversity, you can sometimes find that a little quicker or in a different way if you go and do your volunteering work. Now there was one question that I find provocative, so I'm going to ask and see if anybody wants to answer it. And that is, have you ever felt there's a different standard or recognition for women volunteering versus men? And I'm not talking about the bouquet of roses for the versus, a trophy or something like that. But has anyone ever seen that, meaning that we get less credit for it? Or do you feel like it's really pretty level playing field? Kathy's shaking her head. So
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. I think it's an interesting question. I haven't really given it a lot of thought, but I can't say that I've felt it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mary Ellen, you seem to agree. So thank you for
completely agree with Kathy. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've had the opposite. So the first time I wanted to run for president of the Society of Actuaries, I did not get a warm reception on that from my company. And I think that is different than what they would have done for a man. So I wasn't in a consulting company, so it wasn't as obvious of a decision of it being good for the company. But the fact that you're raising your profile, you're doing your leadership skills, all of that, I think that they might have valued that differently if it had been a man asking. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't have a direct comparison, but that's makes me wonder.
All right. I'm going to say something that's going to trigger a lot of anger in some women, but one of our attendees said, it makes me think of the welcome to your leadership role or your role on this committee. You'll be taking notes because you're the woman. But I think we've gone past that in some regards. I am notoriously terrible at taking notes, so that has kind of worked me out of that. We all have our strategies, but thank you for that comment. And yeah, that actually is a thing. I think it's becoming less of a thing, fortunately. All right, we have one more question, and then I will say that while it wasn't part of the planned questions, we've had a lot of women who are wanting to get some information about how you got started in the profession and some things we've done to break those glass ceilings outside of the volunteer role. But I will say that we wanted to focus on the volunteer aspect of leadership, just because, again, we're at this moment, and I'll say it one more time, where all 5 associations based in the US are led by women. But I think that's a great follow-up. If we have time, we'll fit it in. But we're focusing on that aspect for this panel. But thank you for your questions and all of the encouraging notes that I'm seeing in the chat. So bringing it down, we have our last question is for everyone, for all of the panelists. And I want to know, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now? So not that you're old, but you were younger at some point. So maybe just think about that and reflect on that for a little bit, as far as what advice, what key thing, kind of like what I wish I'd known, so to speak. And Virginia, we'll start with you.
Okay. I have a feeling this will come up a lot, but I would say start earlier and step out of your comfort zone. Take the risks, especially on the volunteering side. It's an easier way to take some risks and not, have everything at stake. So I would definitely say, start right away, taking risks, speaking up, asking more questions, really putting yourself out there a little bit more. Jennifer?
Yeah. So I think mine might have a little bit to do with the imposter syndrome, or maybe more specifically, the feedback that I would get periodically that I wasn't a leader because I didn't lead like a man. And I always found myself in leadership situations, you know, whether it was the Girl Scouts or the school paper or the whatever. And when it was, you know, mixed gender. So it's kind of like I knew I was a leader because I always ended up there. But I would get that feedback that I wasn't really a leader. And so you know, that plays with your head a little bit of wondering whether you really can be. So I would, you know, encourage my younger self to stick with your confidence, stick with what you know you've done, and not listen to those naysayers.
Jennifer, I do remember being at a board meeting where you would have a walk-up song for your presentation.
Yes.
Haven't seen a lot of men do that. Don't care. It was great. Lead like you want to lead. You don't have to lead like a man. So thank you very much for that. Sorry to interrupting, but it just brought back a fond memory of mine. So Kathy?
Yeah, you know, I think I'd probably loop back to the topic of being a self-advocate. I think I would tell myself to speak up for what I'm worth and what I deserve in terms of, you know, opportunities for career growth and career advancement and so forth. You know, I think for years, I thought if I put in the time and the effort, I would get recognized. And it does happen, but it happens much quicker when you're your own advocate, right? And you get really comfortable recognizing your own strengths and advocating for yourself. And I see it a lot. I don't think women do it enough. I know I didn't do it enough, and that's probably what I would tell myself to do. Speak up for yourself more.
Right. Ties back to Ellen's comments earlier. So thank you, Kathy. Mary Ellen, what would you tell the younger Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I think to better understand the value of the volunteer experience, that it's far richer and more impactful than I initially anticipated. I started my volunteer experience for the purpose of contributing to some academy work that was focused on evolving practices in ERM. And I quickly learned that, you know, I just received so much more than I felt I was contributing. And while I've been in a consulting actuary for most of my career, and therefore I've worked with many different actuaries over time, working on a common project with actuaries across different practice areas, you know, each with vastly different experiences, really an opportunity that's you know, fully afforded through volunteer work. It's just so extraordinarily rewarding. And just a story about that, a few years back, while I was at a particularly demanding time in my life, you know, I thought once again about work-life balance. You know, I was extremely busy with the career that I love. I was contributing quite a bit of time as a volunteer. And coming from a large family and having children of my own, there are always so many wonderful opportunities to focus my time. But I remember my husband at that point, you know, trying to be helpful, suggested that perhaps I could ease up on volunteering a bit. And I just instinctively rejected that idea, because my volunteer life provided me with an opportunity to learn so much more than I ever would on my own. And I just enjoyed it so much. And it was about that time I was driving to a client and heard the results of a study that, yet another study that examined career happiness. And I remember the findings were somewhat surprising to the researchers, since they found that those individuals who were happiest with their careers were also people that supplemented their careers with another partial job or passion. And I think this speaks to some earlier comments, because the thinking was that the career reflected really what the person was really good at and committed to, but perhaps had restrictions, some type of restrictions related to it. While the part-time job was where a person to be far more creative and exploratory. And this report really hit me as it perfectly expressed why I just love my volunteer experience so much. It just so greatly enhances what I'm able to contribute to my primary actuarial career, and frankly, my overall fulfillment.
I don't know, Mary. If I hadn't already volunteered, Marilyn, I would run right out now and find a way to do it. That was the most beautifully worded expression of why you should volunteer. Maybe I just think that's beautiful, and thank you so much. There were so many great thoughts shared there, but I really like that diversity of thought, and not just the types of people you're interacting with, but the types of actuaries. And I agree with you, being exposed to actuaries who have different backgrounds, they think differently, they solve problems differently, and it just broadens your world. Thank you. That was just beautiful. Ellen, we're going to let you close out this particular question. So what thoughts do you have?
I when I first saw this question that we were going to talk about, I struggled with it, because I sit here today, and now with the benefit of hindsight, I look back on it and say, very frankly, there's not a whole lot I would change, right? Or that I would do differently, because I now know how it's all going to work out for me. But as I sit here in this year where I'm going to celebrate my 30th year in this profession, I think what I would tell myself is, you don't know it now, but you've already set yourself on the path to success. When you were in college, you raised your hand for some things you didn't actually think anyone was going to take you up on. Gosh, by golly, they did. And you already started learning some leadership skills and some of the foundational things. So be patient with yourself. Don't measure yourself against the person next to you. Measure yourself by the path that you're on and where you need to be and what you need to be doing to continue growing and learning and developing as yourself within your profession. Don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't let anybody else tell you that being your authentic self isn't enough. And by the way, don't tell yourself that you aren't enough, because I used to do that to myself all the time. I still do on occasion. And just be gentle to yourself, and be patient, because it's all going to come together in the end for you. And you're going to end up in a place where you have amazing opportunities available to you, an abundance of professional riches and experiences to look back on. So just be yourself and keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. I like that, Ellen. And thank you. That was a great way to round things out. Some beautiful lessons for all of our younger selves, but we can apply them now. It's not too late. Even if you're retired, Jennifer, there's things that you can apply in your volunteer roles or whatever you're doing. I love everything that you guys said. It was really, really wonderful. And thank you so much for this discussion today. You did not disappoint me, at least. I got a lot of great ideas and inspirations for each of you. I just have a few really quick closing remarks. The CCA's Women in Consulting community, and the leadership development community are open forums to any actuary. So just please reach out to the CCA if you want to join these communities. Now, and a reminder that there will be a follow-up discussion on what was presented and discussed today on March 15th. Show up if you want to have a little more in-depth discussion on any of the questions that were posed, or if you want to follow up on the questions that you posted in the chat or otherwise that we unfortunately were not able to get to. Also, I want you to check out the network of Actuarial Women and Allies online and on social media, also affectionately known as NAWA. Or Adrian's group, but whatever you want to call it. Network of Actuarial Women and Allies is online and a great social media way to connect. I want to thank Shannon Peterson, my hero, and CCA staff for helping to organize today's event. She is awesome. And Michael Clark, who was mysteriously working in the background, helping make sure I'm asking the right questions and keeping on time. He's a past president of the CCA and co-producing the event today. So join us for upcoming CCA events and follow us online at CCA. Thanks, everyone. This has been fabulous for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tanya, thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists.